Well, welcome back this week. It looks like the forecast is showing we're going to have an absolutely beautiful week. We had some thunderstorms again Sunday night, but it didn't amount to a whole lot. The ground is somewhat dry, but the crop is wet, which is, perfect conditions for disease. But in this particular field, this barley is just, flag leaves are out and starting to unroll, and there's actually very little disease. There's a little bit of blotch and stuff on those very bottom leaves, but that's not too much of a concern as long as it's not moving up the stems. So we're going to keep looking around this morning and hope we don't get more thunderstorms this afternoon. Well, the potatoes are looking great this week. Last week they were just hooking, and now there is actually tiny little spuds starting to form. So that's interesting to see. Once in a while I'll poke my head in and take a look at these. Well, I'm out in the winter wheat field that I found the rust in last week, and I am still finding a bit of rust here, some right here. But the color is a little bit different. It's a little bit more yellowish right now, and did get sprayed with folic here a couple days ago, so hopefully that has shut it down for now, and should get us through head emergence, and hopefully then the weather will play nice with us and we won't have too much of a problem. Well, I'm just starting to see the very first pea flowers starting to open, so that means it's almost time for fungicide in the peas. I like to wait until there's, kind of first blooms kind of across the field before application, but this year there's the new Miravis Neo from Syngenta, as well as their Elatis, which is another great product. There's probably close to 40 fungicide options for peas that you can use, but those are good options to start with. Well, here you can see some really stressed canola. This is right by Lethbridge here, and you can see it's rolling up, flipping over leaves. And that's not uncommon when the temperature comes above 25, especially, this early in the season. The canola is rapidly growing, sucking up water as fast as it possibly can, and the weather's kind of knocking it for a little bit of a loop right now. Canola doesn't particularly like weather over 25, 26 degrees. It'll almost always show stress symptoms, but other than that, this canola is looking pretty good. It is just, bolting basically now, so we're probably about a week or so away from early fungicide timing, and should be sweeping it for bugs. It's just tall enough, but I'm on the bike right now and I don't have a sweep net with me, so I'll have to check it later. And you never know what you're going to find at your field entrances when you're by town. It looks like a whole load of pig parts got dropped off at my field entrance here, so isn't that nice? I'm only like a mile out of town. Well, I'm thinking I can't really ride the bike too much through the fall rye anymore. Visibility of what's underneath is pretty much impossible. It's now as tall as my handlebars, but the fall rye is looking great. There is a bit of white mold starting down at the bottom, but we're pretty much done flowering now, and these heads are going to start to fill here pretty quickly. Here is some barley down by a Colehurst, and as you can see, it is just absolutely rotten with net blotch and spot blotch, which is really starting in here. Had to come in here late last week with a second round of Axial to take care of the second flush of wild oats, so we threw in some tilt or bumper at the same time to hopefully get this disease suppressed and under control, because it is spreading like crazy in this field. One of my favorite times of the year, watching this goofball jump around in the winter wheat. Well, we're out here in the winter wheat near Picture Butte, and it is looking really nice. We're now in heading. Still not seeing any rust or anything in this field, but there is quite a bit of tan spot and septoria on some of these lower leaves, a little bit of stagnosporia. The white mold I don't see quite as much of this week, but this is a good timing for, like if this was a hard red spring wheat, this would be a decent timing for a fusarium product. We're now pretty much at head emergence, but we have not yet flowered. Well, guess who gets to ride in the back of the truck now? No more back seat for you today, mister. Well, here's some bolting canola over by Colehurst, so let's see what we can find in the sweep net today. This is getting just big enough now. I can do my sweeps. Remember, you always want to do 10 sweeps with the net kind of half in the crop, and I'm already losing count. I think that was 6. All right, let's see what we got in here. Oh, a whole pile of flies. Well, this is awkward to do with one hand. All right. Here we go. We got some spiders. We got 3 or 4 lygus, and that looks like about 20 seed pod weevils. They are the gray guys that are climbing around here, so that is generally what we're looking for at this time of the year. There's quite a few on the edges of the net here as well, so we're probably at thresholds. Well, here's some very diseased barley up by Carmen Gay. If you measure disease pressure by the number of plants in, say, a handful, then this would be rated as high, even though it's not on necessarily every leaf. But there is quite a bit of scald and net blotch starting on these leaves here. And even up to the penultimate leaves on some of these guys here. So flag leaves for the most part are just unrolling and are still clean themselves, but there is quite a lot of disease down here in the lower canopy. There is lots of scald and net blotch. So this is perfect timing for product like Trivapro, which has got the Slatinol in there, which is going to give you really good control on these diseases for quite some time actually as well. So that is what I would recommend in a field like this. Hit it at flag leaf timing with a product like Trivapro, and then we should hopefully be done for the season. Well, down here by McGrath in the Durham, there is a pile of little tiny grasshoppers. I don't know how well these guys show up. Here's one here. There's another one down there. There's a few more of them kind of jumping around as I move the camera around. Oh, there's one over there. So they are still very, very small nymphs, but interesting that we're seeing this many of them in this field at this time because of how wet it's been. Typically on wet years you don't really have problems with grasshoppers, but because we've been so dry the last few years, the egg load is probably sufficiently high that we might actually end up having a problem. Here is a patch of lentils where some of them are starting to look pretty sick. And this is in a very wet spot in the field. This is actually in the corner of a field, but it's a very wet spot, and the lentils are really struggling. When you pull them up, the roots are kind of turning a bit brown, and the nodules that were previously healthy are now brown through and through when you cut them open. So they're not nodulating properly anymore. They're blowing those nodules off, and they're just not looking all that great. The field overall is looking pretty good, but it's just these low spots like this one that are really suffering, and there's a few others throughout the field. Lentils like a well-drained soil. They like to be fairly dry, and that is certainly not the year for that down by McGrath. We've had, probably 2 inches of rain here in the last 2 weeks, so things are pretty wet. Well, the peas down by McGrath are looking really nice. As you can see, they are getting well knitted together now, and they're not quite knee tall. We're still a little ways away from seeing buds. We still have basically 1.5 to 2 nodes until we start seeing flower buds, so probably still about a week away. As far as disease goes, really not seeing very much in that lower canopy here. Which I'm actually quite surprised by because of how moist and how humid we've been, but that is a very good thing. But we will still be protecting our yield at flowering time, which is probably about roughly a week away, by spraying this field with Alatus once we see some blooms opening up. Well, the barley down by McGrath is looking absolutely fantastic. We're coming into flag leaf timing here now. Flag leaves are just emerging and unrolling, and we do have a couple little spots of net blotch. I don't know if you can see that piece right there, that are up on the upper leaves, but overall disease level is somewhat low. But if this isn't the best looking dryland barley I've seen in years, I don't know what is. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to recommend that a field like this, to protect yield, hit it, flag leaf timing with something like Trivapro. It's going to give you pretty lasting leaf disease protection. That would be a great idea to protect your yield on a field like this. Here's some of my corn by Lethbridge, and as you can see, it is doing very, very well. There's still the odd weed that is recovering here and there, but at this point now the corn is big enough and the weather is hot enough that it will pretty rapidly outgrow anything. In fact, there is the odd corn out here, I don't see any close by, that does have yellow top, which is a normal symptom in corn at this time of the year. When we've gotten some cool nights and then some hot days, it'll quite often grow so fast it'll shoot a yellow leaf out of the top, and that leaf will then turn green over the next couple days as the rest of the growth kind of equalizes. But this is sure looking good for now. I can't wait to see what this turns into later in the year. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.